Welcome back to my channel of an Everyday Life on Aspie. If you're new to my channel, I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with Aspergers Syndrome and the like, and taking you all on a journey what life is like for me with Aspergers Syndrome, just to bear in mind that everybody on the spectrum is different. So that's why I'm here today to be your mental advocate and whatnot, just to share on the lowdown of basically what life is like for me, so that you can gain a better understanding of it all, as well as hopefully in saying this, that if you meet someone that is autistic, that maybe you'll be brave enough to answer a few questions if they're brave enough also to respond back to you. So this one, as you know, even though I've been trying to do as of late some more vlogmas and mental health and awareness and some other series to put on the back burner while I'm away missing in action, so hopefully in saying this, that some of this will educate you all, inform you and enlighten you all, hopefully in whatever topics that you may want. Smash the like button if you're liking some of these, and also give me the lowdown on the comments below, you know, about the comments about yes, I'm liking these, or just a bit of form of feedback here and there would be much appreciated. So in saying this one's all about the Aspergers Syndrome and social anxiety, and the question is, are they the same? And just a disclaimer before I begin this is that I'm no medical doctor, so if you see any signs and symptoms that persist in the present from now or in the last few videos that are shown, basically do seek professional help for yourself or your loved one, or seek professional advice for yourself or your loved one, because I don't forever condone self-harm. So let's begin this before I run out of time. So the question you may be asking, as I said, are they the same for Aspergers Syndrome as well as social anxiety disorders? Many people make a mistake of this, and obviously in my forte, from what I can gather based on my research and experience, no, they're not. So that's why I'm here today, to actually address this to you all, that it's not, and hopefully back up some evidence from my research and whatnot. Asperger's disorder, or as it's not clinically known as Aspergers Syndrome, is a pervasive developmental disorder that belongs to the class of autism spectrum disorders that will involve impairment in sort of basic aspects of communication and relationships, be it whatever it may be, with your peers, family, co-workers and the like. Although people with both Aspergers Syndrome and social anxiety disorder, however, may experience difficulty in social situations that are completely two different disorders, the diagnostic criteria and symptoms of the disorders that are shown are prevalently different. Social anxiety disorder is markedly different than Asperger's syndrome, and saying that, as I said, and I can't stress it enough, as a pervasive developmental disorder, also in a milder form or version of autism, and that people with social anxiety disorder, however, doesn't display the same patterns of behavior expected in definition A and B as shared. Asperger's syndrome is a mild variant of the autistic disorder. Both Asperger's syndrome and autistic disorder are in fact the subgroups of a larger diagnostic category. However, this larger category is called either autistic spectrum disorders or pervasive developmental disorders, according to Dr. R. Khan Ozebarak of the University of Massachusetts in the medical school. Definition A also doesn't fit in because anxiety isn't the cause of these behaviors in Asperger's syndrome, as it is when it occurs in people with social anxiety disorders. Asperger's syndrome is usually diagnosed in childhood, however, but then it will vary from person to person, just to bear in mind. If your child has been diagnosed with this disorder, they might experience significant impairment in social interaction with their peers, such as problems with eye contact, facial expressions and body posture. They may also have trouble developing friendships, sharing interests, and understanding the social and emotional perspectives of others. They may engage in restricted and repetitive behaviors that will become excessively preoccupied with their interests, routines, and rituals, the parts of objects, or repetitive motor mannerisms such as your hand twisting, stimming, and the like. So how does social anxiety disorder and Asperger's syndrome differ? If you suffer with SAD, I'll call it for short, anxiety is the driving force behind the difficulties that you may experience in social and performance situations. Your ability to function is limited by anxiety in those everyday situations, as well as just when you're socializing with your peers. A diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, on the other hand, doesn't require the presence of anxiety. Behavior and social situations is instead impaired because of trouble reading and understanding social and emotional cues. People with Asperger's syndrome might appear tactless and rude, be unable to take the hints or understand humor, or even just the sarcasm, stands too close, so they have a lacking of ability of social boundaries. They'll talk too loud, have trouble understanding the meaning of gestures, tone of voice, and facial expressions. These characteristics, however, on the opposite hand of those displayed by the socially anxious child or adults, if you were to suffer from SAD, your fear of embarrassment or humiliation most likely manifests in 1. Standing too far away, talking too softly, or being overly sensitive to the body language of others. Those with SAD are capable of forming relationships, but are impaired by anxiety. On the other hand, people with Asperger's syndrome has difficulty with the nuts and bolts of communication that makes relationships possible. Research on the brain function in Asperger's syndrome and SAD. Neuroimaging research may shed some light on how the brains of people with SAD and Asperger's syndrome differ. Studies on these, however, for most people of the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, is activated when understanding facial expressions. On the other hand, for those with Asperger's syndrome, the prefrontal cortex of the center for the judgment and planning becomes activated or active when processing facial images. This will mean that people with Asperger's syndrome try to logically figure out the meaning of facial expression rather than expressing an automatic emotional reaction. And I'll hopefully link up a diagram or something in the top right hand corner for you guys to understand where I'm coming from, but more of this piece will be later, hopefully, in understanding the differences of the autistic brain versus the times. Studies have also shown some heightened sensitivity of the amygdala in those with SAD. This will make it even more clear that the two disorders are very different. Interestingly enough, though, social anxiety, sometimes known as social phobia, is sometimes said to first appear in adolescence, when the young person becomes aware that they are on their own socially and their performance will have an impact on their ability to attract friends and their partners. This is also often the time at which the autism spectrum disorders become particularly noticeable and difficult, as the safe environment of junior school is exchanged for the more complicated, variable, and larger world of secondary education. Both will, however, coincide with the onset of puberty and other internal and external changes in the body. Whilst not suggesting that autism spectrum disorders and social anxiety disorders are the same thing, I suggest that some people diagnosed with social anxiety may in fact do have autism spectrum disorders, but it pays to seek your professional for more advice into this, as well as, second opinion and a clear test here. And that in saying this, their social fears aren't entirely unjustified, or that it's social anxiety rather than autism spectrum disorders which leads a person to drink or do drugs to self-medicate against these feelings of anxiety. Anxiety isn't necessarily characteristic for social anxiety disorders, but anxiety isn't part of the diagnostic criteria, however, on the other hand, for autism spectrum-like disorders. It just happens to be a byproduct for large numbers of those with these conditions. The person with autism spectrum disorders may have a legitimate fear of social errors, as they may be aware that their social skills in this area have let them down in the past. Social anxiety disorder is a recognized condition and is included in the diagnostic manual, such as the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5 or 4 in the 1994. But then it has been clearly announced that they have to try and put some bits together. It is different to autism spectrum conditions in that it's not necessarily a lifelong condition. Its onset tends to be during teenage years and doesn't necessarily affect an individual's innate communication and language processing. But there can be similarities in the outcome: isolation, anxiety, low self-esteem, and avoidance of social interaction with their peers in social situations in everyday life. Guardian 2005 says the DSM-5 says the diagnosis, or DSM-4 I should say, that the diagnosis of social anxiety disorder shouldn't be made if a pervasive developmental disorder, autism spectrum disorder, are described as such that is present. He then suggests that this implies that the symptoms of social anxiety must already have been symptoms of these developmental disorders, both of which, with these autism spectrum disorders and social anxiety disorders, will avoid social situations for fear of humiliation and or embarrassment of getting it wrong. One adult with Aspergers syndrome explains it something like this: it's not so much of getting it wrong, but a matter of accepting or knowing time after time that you don't know what to do or have no hope of getting it right, so it's easier not to bother with the personal interactions. Features of social anxiety disorders may include fear, anxiety in relation to people being near or having to interact with their others in their peer group, fear of judgment or criticism by other people, which may result in being hypersensitive to the comment of others. Another one is dread and panic before certain situations and potential replaying or ruminating on the event afterwards after it has happened. The physical symptoms such as shaking, nausea, and the raised heart rate. A related condition known as avoidant personality disorder, or APD, shows significant overlapping to social anxiety, and opinion varies as to the difference between the two of them. The suggestion is that APD is more severe and is hard to shift than social anxiety, with the focus being on faulty thought patterns rather than anxiety itself. Some of the features of APD are persistent feelings of tension and fear, lack of self-esteem and feelings of inferiority and inadequacy, fear of being criticized socially, limited or restricted lifestyle due to a need to have physical security, avoidance of contact with people in any context for fear of social failure, inadequacy, or fear of rejection. Treatment for Aspergers Syndrome and SAD. Although there are no firm data, complicated anxiety disorders are common among children with Aspergers Syndrome. This may mean it is possible for a child to suffer with both Aspergers Syndrome and SAD. Whether or not a child has one disorder or both, social skills training is one form of treatment that may be often offer promise for both of these. Although the cause of social impairment in Aspergers Syndrome and SAD differ from person to person, but many of the same symptoms are present in both disorders. If you suffer with Aspergers Syndrome or SAD, you're likely to have a host of social deficits, such as problems with eye contact, body posture, speech qualities, such as tone, volume, and rate. In addition, you probably have trouble building and maintaining friendships. Social skills training has also been shown effective in treating social anxiety-like symptoms and may also offer promise for those with Asperger's also, in terms of developing basic skills for integrating or interacting socially. Whether your child who is showing signs of anxiety or trouble with social situations, or yourself personally is struggling, it's important to consult a doctor first to learn the meaning of your particular array of symptoms. As described in this video, SAD and Aspergers Syndrome are separate problems that show some overlap, however, of similar diagnoses and symptoms and characteristics, but need to be treated differently. Once you've identified your specific issues, however, treatment can be devised to help you overcome your difficulties in social situations. Well, this quickly ends basically the Aspergers Syndrome and social anxiety. Are they the same? Smash the like if you're liking these. Comment below. Feel free to share these videos around. Feel free to follow me on my social media sites. Feel free to also subscribe to me if you feel to join me on my journey right now with this, as well as many more things. While you're done there, if you did decide, feel free to turn on the notification bell so you can be up to date, as well as also just being up to date with my social media stuff on AspieAnswers, Twitter, Facebook. I should be able to post up there. So no further guys, thanks for the support, thanks for watching, do what love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out, and I'll see you again soon. Ciao for now.